Everybody, awesome show today. TJ comes on, talks about his first deal. It's a place he bought with practically no money out of his pocket with his wife, and they have new renters and they're cash flowing. Pretty awesome story, and look forward to it. Welcome, TJ.
Borrowing money at a rate that's less than inflation is basically free money. Any advice that I could give to my past self would be to be flexible, be patient, and make sure that I'm doing good evaluation.
Welcome to the REI Partners Meetup. We're your hosts, Matt Morrow and Richard Clark. This is a place where knowledge is shared, friends collaborate, as we help each other to succeed in both our real estate and personal goals. We are a group of like-minded individuals from across the country who are here to help and support each other. Investors, realtors, entrepreneurs, and many others contribute to providing diverse and practical content for our events, especially our mentors who enjoy helping new and experienced investors in their journeys. Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoy the show and encourage you to bring others who may find value as we invest in our collective future.
Yep. So I just went through my first purchase with Matt as well. He was by my side the whole time, but he asked me just to present a little bit about how the process went, what we did, what we found, what worked for us, just to get some more stories out there, kind of for the whole group. So this is my first one, and we actually didn't have to use really any money out of pocket, or minimal money. So just to let you know how I kind of started, I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast in 2016. And then in 2018, I started the books. I started with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure we've all read that. And then I bought the book on rental property investing. And that was when Matt caught me at the pool at the gym reading that and came right up and said, "Hey, I think I've read that book 3 times by now." And he asked me kind of what my background was. And of course, I had no experience whatsoever. I was just trying to gather as much knowledge as I could. And then from there, I just continued to buy kind of the Bigger Pockets books, and just go through one by one to, like I said, get as much knowledge as possible before I felt confident enough to go into it. And then in 2020, as Ryan and Richard know already, and Brian, I think too, I joined the meetup here, and I was pretty good about joining. I was recovering from shoulder surgery, so I was out of work. But since I'm back to work now, it's been a little bit more difficult for me to join. So I'm still around though. I'm still checking out the presentations and things. So initially, I wanted to join forces with 2 of my really good friends, and unfortunately, we all had different visions, and we just kind of started and said, "All right, this isn't going to work. Maybe in a few years, we'll kind of meet back up and see if our ideas cross paths again." But my intent was to BRRRR. I liked that the most because I didn't have a lot of capital. But I was able to take a Heloc out on my current house for $75,000. So my range was around $80,000 cash, and my dad actually was willing to invest about 20 in me as well. So I was looking at usually houses around 80 with $10,000 to $15,000 of rehab. I did get a couple hits on some of the wholesaler sites. I went to look at 3 of them, I think. I put offers on 2 of them, and I got outbid on all of them. So not surprising with the market the way it's been the last 2 years or so. But I just kept going and trying to push through it. The terms on the Heloc that I got on my residence house is a 10-year draw period with a 15-year repayment and a 3.5% interest for the first 5 years, which made me think of a quote from Robert Kiyosaki. He was on a podcast recently talking about inflation and why now is a great time to withdraw money or to take loans out. And right here is kind of the reason why, in so many words. Basically, he was saying on this podcast that if the inflation rate at the time, I think, was like 5.5%. If you can take out a loan for 3.5 or even, 2.8 or whatever it was, that's basically free money that you're getting. Everything else is rising at the rate of inflation, whereas the money that you're taking out falls well below that. And so I just kind of found this quote from him. This was a few years ago. He said this: "The reason my investments and my income grow is because I purchase assets that hedge against inflation." So for instance, in inflationary economies, rents generally rise. When I purchase investment property, the debt payment stays the same while my rents rise due to inflation. This creates more cash flow, and I owe the bank only the agreed upon amount. The rising costs for rent flow straight into my pocket. So I thought that was kind of appropriate now because we're dealing with this inflation, and kind of a good time to do this. So, like I said, I was looking at some wholesaler buyers lists. I looked at 3 properties, offered 2, and I lost both. So I started looking at kind of just the listings. I called a few friends who are real estate agents, just to let them know what I was looking for. One of them was a listing over in West Bethlehem that was actually a duplex. I looked at it on Saturday. Sunday, I called to put an offer in. It was already gone. So they were going as fast as you could read about them. So I created these notifications just on Zillow and Realtor for less than 80,000. And this like real estate market that we're talking about just caused me to kind of shift my strategy a little bit. So instead of looking to burr something and buy it all in cash, I thought, all right, what can I do with this $75,000 that I have? And so I started looking for a more traditional buy and hold strategy by using my Heloc as a down payment. So obviously the big disadvantage to this is it's a lot slower to extrapolate your model than burring. And I'm also tying up all or most of my capital in one property, but I thought it's better to move forward than to not move at all. So I'm going to just go and see how this goes. But the major advantage was that now that I started looking at single family residences up to $200,000 instead of looking for fixer uppers from 80 and below. And then I also have a little cushion for rehab if necessary. So my criteria basically, like I said, was anything less than 200,000. I was looking at single family homes in the north side of Bethlehem, north of the river there. And my first question was, will it rent? Looking at the 1% rule. And so a few popped up. These 2 really caught my eye. They actually were 2 on the exact same street. They were 2 houses apart. One was 334 and the other one was 340. So 334 was the really nice one. It was at 180. It was a 4-1, 1,400 square feet, and it didn't need anything. The estimated rent on Rentometer was $20.48. And by the time I called Matt and said, "Hey, do you think we can get into this one?" He said, "Sure, but just to let you know, they have 20 showings tomorrow." And so I said, "Okay, well, how about this one?" And it was a few houses down at 340. They were asking 168. It's a 4-2, 1,374 square feet, not quite as turnkey, but still nothing major. Estimated rent very similar at 2021, and they only had 2 showings the entire weekend. So I'm under the impression that that really nice 334 that was 2 houses up stole a lot of attention away from this one. And so this is just a little snippet of my evaluation. Can you see my mouse moving around here?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I just put in, all of the pertinent information. I added 5% for purchase costs, and I guessed on rehab, to be honest. I went through and put piece by piece square footage, floor, appliances, all that. And this is the number I came up with, this 54,5894. And so my total needed for my Heloc is right here, the 47,459. And after looking at, this is what the loan ended up being, 25-year for 4.1%, had to be a commercial loan from Embassy because it's not my primary residence. And looking at all this stuff, right off the bat, if I had my own cash, it would cash flow really nicely. But because I have this HELOC payment, my cash flow initially is going to be about $9. Not ideal, but we're in the game. So we did end up purchasing it on the 7th for asking. The only things that I really had to do was update the flooring, the trim. I kind of redid the bathroom a little bit, and I painted the 3rd-story bedroom. I had the boiler cleaned and reserviced for a couple $100, and I bought a new refrigerator for it. So this is just a little bit before and after. Living room on the left, top and bottom, and then looking back on the right, top and bottom. So I just did like a pergo floor, hung some drapes just to make it look a little more homey. And then the kitchen, I carried the same flooring into the kitchen. The kitchen was recently redone when they put it on the market. So I didn't have too much to do there. I just had to throw that fridge in there. And then the bathroom on the right, I got a new vanity, mirror, toilet, and we're having the bathtub and the surround done in April. There was a wait of about 3 months. So we're having that done in April. This was my budget. Like I said, I had it kind of all nailed down. Anything that I put in gray was actually, I considered tools that I was paying for out of pocket. So I didn't want to take that from this property. It was kind of things I needed anyways, and now I have them for subsequent properties. So if you look down here, this is the total. I went about $900 over, but if you take out all the tools, I was actually only about $300 over. So I'll take that. And like I said, the tool purchases were almost 600.
PJ, you did the work yourself at that price?
I did, yeah. The only thing I had someone come in and do was rewire the bathroom, because the light that was in there was attached to wasn't attached to the wall. It was like one of those little flick ones that you had to do. So I just had him do that. The electrician, that was like $85. Other than that, yeah, I did it all myself. So there, like I said, there is a low cash flow, but this was last week. We were asking 1825, which is actually a little bit below the market rent. I put it in as 1850. So we can, generally it's what I'm showing here, $50 more. But I thought I would include this. This is kind of my argument with myself, what to do. So you can see over the next 5 years, the operating expenses here are listed. But if I don't include the operating expenses with my cash flow, which I was, like the vacancy, CapEx, maintenance, and all that, the reason I might be able to ignore that is because I have this cushion of the HELOC. If I didn't have that, and this was all my money, I only had $47,000 and I put it all in, I would have to account for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it in the account earmarked for all of the expenses. If we get to year 5, this is what I should have saved up in that account, $22,500. This is how much over here that I'll still owe on the HELOC after 5 years. So at that point, I'm going to make a decision whether or not I want to pay the HELOC completely off, take my $75,000 fresh HELOC and start again, or if I'm going to keep that in just for that house. At which point, if I did pay off the HELOC, the cash flow would go from $9 to $419. So we'll see when the time comes. I don't anticipate having a lot of things to fix, but you never know. So that being said, the 5-year projection here is not only will it now cash flow at $419 a month, but based on our down payment, what we've already paid off, and taking into account appreciation of conservatively 1.5% per year, the home should appraise at 196. I didn't say this earlier, but we purchased it for 168 and it appraised at 180. So right off the bat, we were about 12 grand in to some equity. So the new equity in 5 years should be about $64,000. If we can do a HELOC on this house for the next one, we're looking at maybe a $50,000 HELOC moving forward. So the total HELOC money with my equity would be around $127,000. And then the goal maybe from there is just to repeat it. So this is a little bit of a headache slide, but I thought I would include it. So this is my residence. This year I purchased 340 North. My HELOC was 51,000 or so. In 2 years, I should have enough paid off of the HELOC that I can repeat that with another house. In another 3 years, this HELOC will be paid off, and I can do it again with the fourth house. 3 years later, 2 years later, 2 years. So you can see how I'm kind of just reusing the same equity over and over again. I'm going to use each HELOC to pay off a new house and then move on from there. It's not fast. I think on here I have about 12 houses in the next 13 years or so, which isn't too bad. And based on the market and the rates, we may end up just doing a cash out refi instead of a HELOC, but we'll see what the rates look like. And then as far as, what's happened since Sunday, I listed it for rent on Sunday afternoon, I think around 2 o'clock. I had 40 emails and 6 applications in the first 24 hours. And when I finished this as of Wednesday, it was 60 emails with 16 applications. And I just checked while we were talking. I have 75 emails and 19 applications right now. So we're doing an open house tomorrow for a couple hours just to let people come by. I'm going to say all applications are due by Sunday evening, and I will hopefully pick one and let them know by Monday. So it all happened very fast once I got it listed. And the only thing we did was put it on Zillow, really. So kind of wrapping up the deal, we held it for about 6 weeks. My total cash out of pocket was $588 just for those tool purchases. My total HELOC spent was $47,459, and I still have $27,500 left in the HELOC if I need it. So I just thought I'd include this as the last slide, some takeaways. Borrowing money at a rate that's less than inflation is basically free money. Any advice that I could give to my past self would be to be flexible, be patient, and make sure that I'm doing good evaluations. That's it.
TJ, do the renters pay all utilities?
The renters are paying all utilities, yes.
Okay.
I'm taking care of trash, sewer, and water.
So I've listed 3 houses and rented them in the last month. And I start with free listing through apartments.com, and that goes out to Trulia and some other places. And then I put it on Zillow, and then you have to pay $10 a week after the first week. But I will say that 75% of my responses back have been from the Zillow listing. So yeah. A lot of people got upset when they started charging $10 a week. But in my opinion, after 2 paid weeks, I took the last one off. So I spent $20, but I got somebody in there at the absolute top end of the rental market. So yeah, don't scrimp on $10 a week, because I'm finding Zillow's giving me most of my good leads. Yeah, it happened really fast, and they do cross post as well from Zillow to apartments in Trulia. Mm-hmm. You're muted, Matt.
How about now?
Yeah, you're good.
That was awesome, dude. Thanks so much for putting that together.
Yeah, for sure.
I know from our perspective, when we first started talking to everybody like 2 years ago, it was all just kind of forward thinking strategy, but you put on one hell of a presentation and you got a really stellar deal in this market. It happens, we see it happen all the time. And I'm just thankful you reached out to me to help with the process. And as weird as it is, I'm glad I saw you reading that Bigger Pockets book that day at the gym, because, same thing. That's right. The reason Ryan's on this call too. We're sitting there just reading the same stuff, and you're killing it, dude. That was a really, really good deal. Great appreciation. And I wouldn't bat an eye at $9 a month cash flow if none of it is out of your pocket, because soon it's going to be a bank. Yeah. And your strategy for the future and using the equity there, as long as you don't over leverage, No, that Kiyosaki reference is perfect.
Yeah.
I know TJ, you got to get running here in just a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions or anything for TJ?
I just want to say it's a great example of baseball strategy of just getting base hits and not worrying about a home run, right? That's going to win the game.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else for TJ?
I just want to say it was a great job. It was a great presentation, and it's good to see people in the group go from owning no properties to one property, because I'm in a similar situation. And yeah, I like what Brian said too. It's important that you just get established in your first property and, you know, gain some experience being a landlord and with the whole process. So I really appreciate the presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Thanks for allowing me to do it.
Would you be willing to maybe PDF that and we put it in our group files when we have that folder established?
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, TJ.
All right, guys. Yeah, no problem. Enjoy. Sorry, I can't hang with you for the rest.
Be safe. Put your mask on.
Thanks. Great job.
You got it. See you guys.
Later, man. All right, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining up. That was a pretty fantastic show by TJ. We started working together a few months ago, and he is amped. They got a really sweet deal on that place that appraised for quite a bit more than they asked. And that Zillow thing, I know Brian's on the call now too. He can kind of attest to this. We hate the word Zillow as agents, but Richard too. Hey, congratulations, buddy. Everybody, Richard's licensed.
All
He's
right.
not even talking. He's like, I don't want to talk to you guys. I'm better than you now. So no, that Zillow is a really good tool, especially if you're marketing your own properties, but always take into account all the other avenues you have to market. You never know who might be out there. So I think we're going to switch gears here. Richard and I are going to kind of talk about the group real quick, some changes from previous, and then we'll get into the next section here. Richard, I'm going to share this. Anybody see this?
Yeah, Facebook.
Well, for right now, this is what we have. All right. Rich is in the process of creating the website. It's going to be very similar to the last type of situation we had, except it's not going to be Google based. It's going to be an actual website with files and such. We're going to try and keep all the spam out. There's a whole bunch of stuff on here. We're going to have the YouTube page up to link these videos. They'll be up a few days after the meetups here, but please, follow the page. If you have any questions, let us know, or any suggestions of content to go on. That's this is where it'll be. So Rich, if you want to just take a dive at kind of the changes that we have, that'd be awesome.
The wait a minute, say again.
The updates from our old format, how we're going to kind of change.
Oh yeah. Well, a couple things we're going to do is we're going to come up with a more formalized presentation strategy. We may have guest speakers on occasion, and you notice we shortened the time to an hour and a half because everyone's time is valuable. 2 hours was getting a little bit long in the tooth, and attention spans beginning to wane after a period of time. So the website is being developed. I'm probably going to focus more on that after my move. In the middle of closing on a house right now. So once we're settled, I will focus on developing the website to where you can go there, and if it'll have a membership section where you'll just sign up. There's no cost to any of this. But then on the back end, you'll be able to get attachments of all the presentations and the decks and the documents and things that are going to be publicly available anyway. So I don't know. I think that's pretty much what we got going on. Matt chose the logo, which I think was great. I think it looks really good. And well through real estate as a tagline I thought that was taken by someone, but fortunately it wasn't, which really blew me away. Yeah, we're cranking on this, and it's because we have a lot more people than maybe are on this call following us right now, which is a good thing. But it does mean more work, and it does mean having to manage and maintain, various aspects of social media and other areas where we reach out to people, emails and things like that. So we will have email addresses to reipartners.net, and you'll be able to send emails to us and all that. So yeah, it's some good things happening, and there's a few other investors that I plan to have come on. These are gentlemen that have lots of money. They seem to be independently wealthy. I'm still filling them out, but they're going to be a part of our call. And one of the things I think we're going to add to is deal evaluation. We're going to pick a deal. We'll evaluate that deal, and whether it be one of the deals sponsored by one of you guys, or if we come up with our own, it'll be a deal that will be real and one that can be invested in. Whether or not we decide to do it individually ourselves, or if there's a syndication that we want to do, we'll work through all of that. But the focus will be to bring about opportunities that everyone can participate in one way or another. The last thing I will say to this is that we want to have, the focus right now is in PA because that's where most people are. But we're finding that we have an audience outside of Pennsylvania, and we're going to figure out how we're going to cater to that as well going forward. And maybe there'll be some deals outside of the state that can be done that participants here might want to play in. So, Matt, you want me to do the market thing now, or what?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain. I think everybody's been on so far, I guess, except for Brian. Brian, we've had anywhere between 15 and 25, 30 guys on the call before. And it's not just from the Lehigh Valley. There's guys from Denver, Texas, Phoenix, we have some guys from Florida, San Diego. They all call in. So with different schedules, I mean, it's not even breakfast time where these guys live. So we're trying to just match it for everybody, which is why we get everybody that we can with a time that works good for the presentation, and then we'll just zoom it out and stream it on YouTube so people can watch after the fact. But I appreciate you joining in. I know it's a tough time of day, but so far I think everybody's been on. Yeah, Rich, if you just want to jump right in, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Uh-oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to share my screen. I'm going to share this one. Share. Boom. How's that?
Looks good. Are you in presentation mode?
I'm in presentation mode.
All right, it still shows notes and such. It's not a full screen.
It's not showing. You should see just the title slide, yeah?
No, we see the next slide too, but it's all right. I mean, whatever works.
Let's see. Let's try it this way. I have two monitors, so that might have an effect on what's happening, How's that? No?
Still the same.
So
That's all right.
you have to turn off presentation mode, I think, or something like
All right, we'll turn off presentation mode. You can still see what's going on there, yeah? All right.
That works.
Did that work? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to talk quickly about some trends and some things that Matt and I have discussed in the market and what's coming up in the in 2022, what we think will be coming up. We both review a number of different resources to determine, you know, what the so-called experts out there are saying. And some of it is plausible, some of it may not be so much. So I am a real estate investor and now a realtor new. So I have not joined a brokerage yet. I'm still shopping those to see which one I want to go with. But you'll see my agent numbers and all of that and everything coming up soon. So, but one of the first things I want to talk about here briefly is what moves the real estate market, right? 4 key areas that make the real estate market move. The first is demographics, right? Where are people moving? What is the population factors like age, ethnicity, gender, income, migration patterns, things like that. These demographic changes affect the real estate market, obviously, because people are moving to different places. We know that a lot of people are coming out of New York, going to Florida and other places. People from California going to Texas. You know, we're seeing a lot of movement in those demographics for a number of different reasons, but that's one of the key areas that I think that's affecting the way the market is performing right now. The second would be the economy. The health of the job market and businesses in any given economy are going to be a factor in moving real estate, whether it's higher or lower. So as we know now, the economy is suffering from a degree of inflation. We know the Fed's going to be raising the rates soon enough, and that's going to affect the market as well. But the overall economy is important because if people can't work, they can't make their mortgage payments or their rent payments. If they can't, if they're making $15+ an hour, maybe they can afford more in terms of rent payment or mortgage. Really depends, but lots of things going on with the economy. I won't touch on a lot of those aspects, but just know that when you're looking at or evaluating where the market's going in your area, consider the economy in your area first and say, okay, what's happening here? Is the market good? If it's not, then how can it be improved? What's going to happen in the future, if you can predict that? Then the interest rates. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Fed's going to be raising rates to kind of stem off inflation. That can have multiple effects. It could either stem off the inflation, or it could, if it's done too abruptly or at the wrong timing, it could push us into a recessive period. We hope that doesn't happen. Either way, in real estate, there's opportunity to be made. There's money to be made in it. And then, of course, government policies are going to be a factor in moving the real estate market. New laws, Fannie and Freddie, you know, and the different types of packages that are offered are all going to be subject to government policies if it's a finance deal. So with that in mind, looking at some of the highlights of what I've seen, you know, we got inflation going on, as I mentioned, right? This is largely due to supply chain problems, and that's going to continue for at least the short term, as far as we can see, whether it be in technologies and chip manufacturing, or whether it be in manufacturing of goods to build houses. We saw what happened with lumber prices in the past in 21, where they went up some 300% or more. And, you know, that's still the case for some raw materials. But supply chain issues are going to continue to burden us for at least the first half, I think, of 22. Therefore, new housing is going to be slow to be built. Doesn't mean that new housing isn't happening. It is. Developers are building new houses because there is a low inventory of housing on the market. And those new houses are being sold. Now, whether or not they're being sold at what would be considered fair market values is a question of debate. But new housing is going to continue, as well as long as people are now more and more working from home. Home prices are continuing to rise. I do have a slide showing some of those numbers, but they're going to continue to rise, but I think maybe a little bit slower because inventory is going to start to increase over 22. The first half of 22 is going to be pretty much the same as the last half of 21, but we'll see more inventories come on board and more opportunities for investors like us to dive into. And then real estate inventories, although they are low, like I said, they're going to be on the rise. The prices are going to continue to be higher than average. If you look at Zillow, I don't know if you guys have gone on and you look at they have this graph on Zillow where they show what the prices were over the past few years. And then all of a sudden you see in 20 or 21 where the price shoots up to some ridiculous figure, almost in some cases double what they might have been in the past. You're going to see that out there, but again, prices are going to continue to remain high as long as the inventories are lower, and it's going to continue to be a seller's market as a result of that. Now, that's just information. That's not anything that that will affect your ability to do an investment, but it does affect you in terms of whether or not or how you buy a property and the cost basis for your all-in cost for purchasing that property, whether it be for buy and hold or to probably flip. I would say that this is probably as good of a flip market as it had been in the past. Flips are always risky. So depending on how well you buy a property, depends upon whether or not you can turn it around quickly, like TJ was talking about earlier in the BRRR strategy. It'd be nice to be able to do that. And if you can, then go for it. But if you can't, then expect to buy and hold and get pretty decent rent values for those properties. The Fed rate's rising, right? My guesstimation is always less than a point. They don't raise rates like multiple points at a time. It's usually a quarter point, a half a point, or tenth of a point, something along those lines. But expect the consumer rates to go up as well. When we shopped our financing for the house we're buying right now, we got 3% on our loan. Just in the last few weeks when we were having some questions about whether or not our lender was going to be able to come through, we were quoted rates of 3.3 to 3.5. So not a lot of change, but when the Fed raises the rates, you can expect the rates to be consumer rates to be somewhere between 3.25 to maybe 4.25, somewhere around there is what I'm thinking. Banks were going to hedge a little bit above prime to make sure that they can make their money, and then commercial rates are probably going to be like a 1.25 to 1.5 points higher. And then available investment dollars will continue to increase. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of money, a lot of cash, and they don't know where to put it. And they're looking for places to put it. They don't necessarily want to put it into cryptocurrencies or into the stock market, but they may want to put them in real estate. A lot of them are, at least the ones that I'm talking to, are wanting to put their money into real estate. So the question then becomes is how do you bring deals to them that they're going to be interested in? And that's something that Matt and I both have talked about. I have one investor now that wants me to build a portfolio up here for him. So, and of course, that's going to benefit me as well. And we'll see how that works out, but the money's out there. A big boom in secondary markets. What I mean by that is not the non-NFL cities, so to speak. If you look at places like Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a technology hub in Tennessee that's growing phenomenally. Other cities, maybe North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, along the eastern perimeter, and then out west, you have more growth in the middle of the country, Oklahoma, in some places, even places like Missouri are growing. So those markets are great markets to be in during this migration that's taking place. And then of course there's lots of rental increases that are happening out there. I looked at a property that we sold last year, townhome, where our rents were $1,300 a month. The average rents in the area were around $800 to $950. Now, when I look at the comps for rents in that area, they're all above $1,000. So the rents are going up, and they're going to probably continue to go up as long as the income streams can support that. So, and you know, I've seen McDonald's offering $1,000 sign-on bonus for workers, and something's going on in the job market that's preventing some people from wanting to work. A lot of people are going to do their own thing, starting their own businesses. That is going to likely continue, and we're going to see the job market, at least on the lower end, continue to strain, while on the higher end, we're gonna see higher income streams from them. So some opportunities there. As far as market numbers, residential Zillow's market forecast believes that houses are going to increase 11.8 to 13% over 2022. And Realtor.com is saying that, you know, they're looking at 17% or better, although at a slower rate. Now, you can see here in the graph, it's, you know, inventory growth is expected to return over time in the first half of 22, looking at 26%, and then in the second half of 22 at 12%. So, you know, we'll see those inventories grow. Then we'll start seeing the numbers as far as pricing begin to stabilize. I think everybody knows here on this call that, you know, current prices are inflated. They're frankly higher than they need to be and what they would normally be in a normal market. But they're going to continue to be that way as long as inventories are where they're at. But as the inventories begin to come on, then we're going to see, okay, prices are going to begin to stabilize. I kind of see it as the bubble getting a pinhole prick, and the air slowly coming out of it.
Hey, Richard, it looks like that graph is not like anything that you can stick a pin in. It's opinions, right?
Yeah.
Opinion, which of the time frames will the inventory grow again? So 26% people think it'll be the first half of this year. It's not, that's not showing actual inventory growth or anything like that.
No. If I made that impression, I didn't intend to do that. But yeah, but there's an expectation that, you know, inventories. My point is that inventories are going to slowly come up this year, and then as inventories come up, we might see some normalization or some stabilities in some markets in terms of pricing. You know, here in Harrisburg, which is actually, depending on where you look, I think it was Forbes that suggested that Harrisburg was a great market to invest in. It's an okay market to invest in. I wouldn't call it a great market to invest in. And inventories here have been as low as they've been in other places in PA. At least I think out in Allentown, inventories are really low. And speaking with a seller and a buyer yesterday who lives down in the Lehigh Valley, everything that he tries to look at or buy was gone in a matter of days. I think a lot of you have experienced that, right? Properties come up for sale, and the next thing you know, they're gone in a matter of days. And a lot of that is people buying them sight unseen. It's the only way you can explain it, because there's no way you can put a property up and then have showings and it be gone in a matter of days versus the normal time frame of maybe a couple weeks. So the other impact that's going on right now is the virtual office migration that's happening. A lot of people are working from home now. I think that's the new normal. Is we're going to have a number of people that are working from home, either on a permanent basis or a part-time basis. That's going to continue as long, and the COVID scares are starting to wane, and I think people are getting a little tired of, you know, I guess the way the media is handling the whole COVID crisis. But nevertheless, you're going to have people working. I know my wife works full-time from home. A lot of other people are going to be working full-time from home for any number of reasons, because the screen time is just going up. And, you know, we're going to end up having, and of course, this is going to mean that office space pricings is going to be affected. You know, being able to go out and have office space for a given business may not be necessarily where people want to go, because that's an expense that some companies don't need or can no longer afford. So, but you can see here that, you know, the shift is happening and it's going to continue. This is from Zillow's economic research and Pulsenomics. This is a Q1 2021. I couldn't find one for anything later than that, but we're going to see the same sort of, I think, trends over the first half of 22. And then you can see here, this is, I like this. This shows the market dynamics for the single family rentals. The reason I put this in here is Allentown, there, Matt, 16% home price increases from 2021. Average prices of 262,000, right? But the jobs versus pre-pandemic are down 1%. So, what are you seeing out there? Is Matt still there?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I had my screen off for a second. This graphic is pretty applicable to most portions of the country. There are some areas that are actually depreciating, but there's always those odd markets. Brian, if you can chime in and kind of correct me if you hear anything here. This particular area, and I think you mentioned it before, Richard, having the secondary and tertiary markets are really exploding, in addition to the big areas like Scott, if you're still on the call, Atlanta is, I mean, it is hyperactive. You can't find anything that's not just exploding as far as value is concerned. But this market dynamic is accurate from all over the country, and the home price increase, we just saw a graphic come out a few days ago from the Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors, and it showed the average sale price of a home in this area increased from, let me just double check, it was like $235,000 last year to $285,000 this year for the same home in the same area. It is a fantastic increase, but one would try and argue how long is that going to continue. So these market dynamics are real, and we see them all the time.
I would strip that Port St. Lucie off that chart, because yeah, 0% job growth, but that's probably primarily a retirement market. So, you know, you could have a bunch of people moving in and no new jobs.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I also read in some reports that people are buying secondary homes nowadays too. So that how that's working out, I can't be for sure, but people buying secondary home. I mean, we even looked at properties in along the coast there, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach.
But I've seen some backlash against that, you know, when people can't buy a home and the people that have a lot of money are buying second and third homes, then they don't like that. And so there's going to be more and more calls to raise taxes on second homes, third homes. So that's something that as investors, we've got to be really careful about. You know, you could build up a big portfolio, then all of a sudden your taxes could go up 50% or more.
Yeah, it could definitely. And then for these areas where we have negative job growth, so to speak, like I grew up in Dayton, Ohio a little bit, so I'm familiar with that area. I can tell you that there is nothing there that, it's not a destination, okay? There's nothing there that's going to make someone want to move there for either a job. The big industries there before were GM, NCR, Diebold, and a few other, Merck, pharmaceuticals, but all those have left or have some downsized significantly. So nobody's going to be going there. But yet, you look at the average home price is nearly $200,000 when the average home price just a matter of even 10 years ago was less than 100,000. So you gotta be careful with these numbers, but you want to make sure that whatever market you decide to invest in, that, you know, when you look at the price of the house, make sure that it's not overpriced so much that if you bought it now and then the market corrects, is it still going to be worth what you paid? That's what you're going to want to know. This market quadrant cycle, I was looking at this and I kind of liked it. In phase one, in a recovery of a real estate market, you see on the left, you have occupancy, and then below you have time. Typically, you have a declining vacancy when the market's recovering, which we are in right now. I would put us, if you can see my cursor, right around in here, just before, because we don't have equilibrium at all right now. The market's just going crazy, and I would say that this line would probably be more vertical from what is depicted. But you typically have, you know, phase one recovery. You're going to have people that are going to be buying and buying and buying, and, you know, long-term occupancy is going to increase into a phase two where you have expansion, or we have a little bit of that. Again, we don't have equilibrium yet, but once we reach that point, phase three would be where we would have more inventory, or at least a balance of inventory against what's being sold. And then phase four would be when we would have more inventory than is needed, and rates are high enough that there could be the potential for a recession of sorts. So I kind of like this diagram. It's pretty neat, but and it doesn't depict accurately everything that could happen in the market, but it kind of gives you an idea of where we are, where I think we are in terms of where the market is today. In the commercial space, you know, multifamily money per square foot is really where I think we need to be. Vacancies, multifamily vacancies hit 4.7% in the third quarter of 21. And that's back at the level seen in the end of 2019. Okay, and that's according to this gentleman here, Victor Kalanog, the head of CRE economics for Moody's Analytics. Overall rental vacancies, though, are decreasing because people are either selling their houses and moving to new places where they have to rent to get familiar with an area before they buy again, or their job changes can cause a person to go from a ownership status to a rental status. Any number of things can happen. But in terms of multifamily, if there is an opportunity to get into a multifamily commercial situation, I would highly encourage you to do that. I know that that's the strategy I'm taking, is looking at multifamilies beyond 4 units to invest in. The interesting thing about commercial is it's much easier to get financing for it because it's based upon the value of the deal and not so much on the individual making the request. So commercial opportunities is something that if you haven't delved into, you may want to consider. When anything 4 units and under is going to be a residential loan. Anything more than 4 units is going to be a commercial loan. And if the numbers work out, if you can get that debt coverage ratio, that DCI, to 1.2 or better, you're going to be in good shape to get approval. In terms of office space, you know, office space, I would say I got a little minus sign there. I would tend to stay away from that. At least that's my strategy. I'm not saying that, you know, office space isn't growing in some areas, because it is, but everything else is definitely a plus. You know, whether it be now restaurants are going to be a little sketchy, because restaurants, as we know, fail more than any other type of business. But there are a lot of restaurants out there that are holding their own. A lot of mom and pops that are where the real estate is already owned, and so they don't have to pay a large amount in terms of rent to someone else. But vanity businesses like barbershops, beauty salons, things like that are going to continue to to be in business because people are going to have to go to those places. People want to go to the restaurants. They want to eat out. And they want to go to the local retail shops for small things. Not everything is online just yet. People don't want to necessarily shop online all the time for everything. And then, of course, repurposing of commercial real estate is going to be a good way to establish whether or not a particular property can be income producing. So you take a particular property like mixed use, where you got some commercial and down below, and then you got some residential up top, would be a good way to go for investment purposes. And then, of course, I put a few down here: self-storage, trailer parks, laundromat, strip shops with an anchor, like if it's got a Starbucks, a Panera, or preferably like a U.S. Postal Office on the end of it, would be fantastic as an investment. Warehouses are also going to be trending upwards, as well as data centers and communication towers as 5G begins to continue to roll out. So those are all going to be commercial opportunities for the investor that can land one. Building materials will continue to remain higher. They're going to continue to, as long as the supply chain is where it's at. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, comments? And so, in summary, seller's market to persist in the first half of 22 is the way I see it. I would say shop all markets, but especially secondary markets for investment, and residential multifamily units if possible. Look into the pre-foreclosures, the tax and share sales. There are opportunities there. I know that it may be tough, and I've attended a share sale a few weeks ago where prices were, it was, you know how people get the auction fever, and they tend to bid more, way more than they should for a given property. I've seen that happen. And look into REITs and crowdfunding. I know Realty Mogul is showing returns in double digits, and Yield Street is also suggesting growth of internal rates of return that are between 10 and 18% in 2 to 7 years. So I'm kind of looking into those. Haven't gotten into them yet, but real estate investment trusts are a longstanding and valuable way to invest in real estate without having the headache of actually managing it. Buy down your equity. So what I mean by that is make sure you buy your properties right. So, you know, even though we're in a situation of inflated prices, make sure you buy the property such that you are buying it with balanced equity, or at least some equity into the transaction. Negotiate harder and creatively. Like I mentioned, you know, we're purchasing our house. We're going to be there at least 5 years, but we offered 165. It appraised at 170. I think they just did that on number. But we're actually we went back and we negotiated an additional 20 grand off the price. So we're buying it with some equity. And then be vigilant in your due diligence. Know what you're buying. Look, don't buy a property that you haven't seen or that you can't go and see or look at. The first time you do that, may be your last. So be careful, and then be patient. Properties will come on and they'll be gone. You'll be like upset, you know, you'll be frustrated, but be patient, but yet be decisive when you decide to actually make that purchase of a given property. You know, so that's my brief update. I had so many other slides I wanted to go through, and I kind of got glassy eyed, but I didn't want to spend too much time on this topic, because you can all do your own research and form your own opinions about how the market's going to go. This is just to give you a quick take from, you know, a discussion that maybe Matt and I have had over the last week or two about where we think things are going to go in 2022. So any questions, thoughts? All right.
Good presentation, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. That was great.
Yeah, I started out before even knowing about investing in houses, putting money in REITs. And just as a warning, I've had a heck of a time getting my money back out of those REITs. I still have some that won't let me have it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when the office market collapsed, they didn't want everybody cashing out and doing a run on the bank. So I've got money in REITs. I would rather be investing myself now that I know what I'm doing, and I can't, you know, until I retire or die or they change their policy. I did get some out last year. So just be really careful about some of those closed-end funds that you gotta make sure you can pull your cash out if you want.
Yeah. A REIT almost feels like a 401k or something when you put money into them. I looked at putting money into a REIT and decided against it because it was a lock-in for 5 years, 7 years. Yeah.
Brian, that's good feedback. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I got some I'd like to share. I didn't really think about till the other day, but I now have 7 of my 9 houses rented, a couple more that are getting close. But out of my 7 houses that I have rented, 5 are rented to single women, single moms, or one's a woman, but she's taking care of her brother that has Alzheimer's. And it really made me think. I was talking to Richard the other day about, do I need to change my strategy and think more in terms of the female renter, like security systems in a house. Like I don't have any houses with a security system, but I think that would definitely appeal. So I'm really shocked that when I just thought about that, how that's turned out. The last 3 that I just have rented out in the last month have all been to females. And I don't know if that's just luck of the draw or what percentage are not a traditional nuclear family with a man and a woman in the same house, whatever, that are in a relationship, but something to think about.
Absolutely. That goes to that demographics question earlier. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to share my screen really quick. We'll try and wrap it up a few minutes early for everybody here. I'll go through my tax presentation and we can open the floor and people ask questions, whatever we have. But we're going to try and be off by 1 o'clock at the absolute latest. So can everybody see this? Right on. You can see the whole screen now?
Yeah, we're seeing the whole big picture there.
All right, perfect. So this is a presentation I just put together, some basics on taxes, how they work with real estate investing specifically, and ways you can kind of minimize your tax liability. Again, this is the disclaimer we have on everything here. This is not legal or tax advice. Please don't do anything we're talking about without talking to your attorney or your accountant or somebody that knows what they're doing better than us and has a license in it. There's a very interesting quote I've seen all over the place, and you can't get away from either of these two things. Smart dude, did a lot, but he is dead on accurate. You're going to die and you're going to pay taxes, and you can't get away from either of them. One of which you can reduce the liability by living a healthy lifestyle, and the other you can reduce the liability by taking advantage of the tax law. As bad as taxes are in most people's eyes, they're actually a very necessary part of our government. I don't think anyone would argue the benefit of taxes. However, all of us realize our country was formed on the taxation anarchy, essentially, leaving taxes. So naturally, most people in this business try and do their best to minimize the amount that you do give the government, but realizing that everything you do give is an integral part of our community. I think we're all okay with paying a little. It just gets excessive. That's when everyone has opinion. So this are the items I'd like to cover briefly today: actual versus taxable or taxable income, entrepreneurs, and how they truly have the best tax opportunity over anybody. Finding and keeping a solid accountant that is real estate friendly. Taxes as a LLC versus personal taxes, and ways to reduce your liability. itemizing deductions through various things, tax credit, depreciation, the 1031, and estate planning. So the goal with paying taxes is reducing your taxable income. Actual income can be any number in the world, but in the end, when it comes to taxes, the only thing that matters is what your taxable income is. If you're filing a Schedule C as an independent contractor, you have a corporation or LLC that does their own taxes, this will vary based on each situation. But most of the talk today is going to be based through an LLC. So this is pass-through income from your personal tax return through your business, which most people in this this kind of business are. The goal is to legally reduce taxable income as much as possible through various forms of write-offs and expenses. And the easiest way to do this, not only does the LLC or C Corp provide protection from liability issues, it also provides a very clear-cut way to account for your business expenses. And when it comes to recording them for tax time, it makes having everything on one side as a business much easier to account for when it's through the business instead of on your personal expenses. Being self-employed can kind of be a kick in the teeth for most people at first, because there's lots of things that you're responsible for paying if you are a full-time investor or a self-employed person to begin with. The most noticeable is Social Security. You don't have an employer to take the hit for you there, so you have a massive Social Security contribution that you're not used to. But the goal is to reduce your taxable income. Taxable income, again, as we talked about, is different than actual income. And here are the taxpayer tables between taxable income and tax due. Again, this is taxable income. So if you make $500,000 and you can somehow write off your taxable income down to $35,000, which is a very common scenario, your tax due is not based on your gross income. It's based on your net after all of your expenses that are applicable to the tax code. Taking a standard deduction is something that most people who are employees do. Standard deductions can also be an easy thing, but they don't necessarily give you the best scenario. In fact, if all of us were to take standard deductions, you might lose out quite a bit. I know for sure. Looking on the people that are remaining on this call, I can tell you that Scott, Greg, Richard, Brian, myself, and I'm not sure about the other Brian, how you all do your taxes, but I would venture to guess that every single one of you itemize. Standard deductions are usually for employee-only style people, and you'll find out really quickly how the tax code is geared heavily towards entrepreneurs and business-minded people to be able to take full advantage, because they're usually the ones who are providing jobs and business for others. Historically, the middle class and W-2 workers pay a much higher tax than entrepreneurs. And it's interesting, regardless of what your political background or affiliation is, the tax the rich to give to the poor is kind of a unique view when the tax are the ones that have all the ability to take advantage of the tax code. So you have someone like Elon Musk who pays hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes every year, but his percentage is in the teens. He's still paying a lot of tax, but he takes advantage of the tax code and he invests in things that are subsidized by the government to give him tax credits and benefits. So these are the tax brackets for 2021. Just mentioned entrepreneurs and business owners have all the tax benefit because the government does encourage investors from investing in areas and markets that produce and provide resources for the public. Specifically, incentives for industries such as energy, research and development, real estate, and a few others like oil. You will find Robert Kiyosaki in most of his books talks about oil, Standard Oil, and how he got involved in it, because that is the business that the government basically pays you to operate in. Every other business selling widgets, opening up a Wendy's, doesn't really provide a critical service. So if you can somehow get a guy design electric cars who can design spaceships and shoot his electric cars into space, he starts getting a lot of tax breaks because he's actually subsidized from the government taking place of NASA, saving the government money. And there are just as many opportunities in real estate to save money on taxes as Elon Musk is doing with the space race. Investing in these industries allows for above average tax benefit, which equals more pocket or more profit and leverage for your business. The absolute most important thing of this whole presentation is finding an accountant who you trust and who is fluent in the real estate language. If you are a stock investor, you want to find an accountant who's very fluent in stock investing. Not all accountants are created equal. You go to H&R Block, they know how to crank through 1099s, W-2s, and get your return filed. They're not going to be the best advisors when it comes to your money as an investor. Find an accountant who is an investor themselves, has rental properties, or some way is experienced in real estate, because they're going to understand the tax code differently than people who are just doing it to push out returns. I don't think anyone on this call is in a position to do their taxes themselves. Does anybody on the call do the filing and stuff themselves if they have an accountant?
I've been doing pretty much everything myself through TurboTax business,
Okay.
but this year I'm definitely looking for someone. I've tried an accountant before, and I like how you put find and keep an accountant on it because, it's crazy being in Atlanta. You would think there'd be so many out there that really know the depths of real estate investing. With my situation, with my taxes, it's tricky because I am on pastoral staff, so I get other interesting tax benefits as well. So this year I'm going to be pounding it out since I'm doing a lot of more purchasing.
Yeah, that's awesome, Scott. Find somebody down there, though. You'll go crazy trying to find it, and you're really missing out on the potential deductions and benefits of the tax code. Even if they're going to be more expensive, which they will be, a good accountant is not cheap, but even if they save you a few grand in taxes, they're not going to cost that much in fees for preparing your taxes. Be sure they understand investments in real estate, and ideal if they own properties themselves. And this is a quote. This last one here is not a quote, but it's kind of a summary of a statement. An accountant who understands real estate is not going to fear the tax code. Most accountants try and prepare your stuff to not get audited. You don't want to raise flags, but an accountant who doesn't fear the tax code will help you be more prepared and understand it so that you never get into that position to begin with. Logging your miles, keeping your receipts, all of that stuff is for every business, not just real estate. But you want to make sure that the accountant that you have is experienced in going through an audit so that when it happens, we're all going to be writing stuff off. You're going to be on the list for the IRS at some point, that they can walk you through and make you comfortable with everything before it happens, so there's no questions. Anybody have any questions about accountants? Find one, keep one. If you don't like them, I say the word fire, but kindly move to the next one. Find one that fits. Taxes when you are operating as a person are different than when you are operating as an LLC. A single member LLC or even multi-member is a pass-through entity, meaning these things go onto your personal tax returns in Pennsylvania or at the IRS as a Schedule C, that these show up on. You have a different return for each business, but it's all on your personal return. It is a separate legal entity. It produces more liability and structure and tax planning advantages, and conducting all the business through the LLC and forming an entity makes record keeping and expense tracking very straightforward. It also allows you to clearly make expenses now business that otherwise were personal, as long as you use them in a business fashion. Here's the ways to reduce your tax liability. Itemize your tax deductions, and that's a whole separate meeting. Net loss, you also pay net or less taxes, but that's not the goal of everyone. However, some years you take a loss. Your first year in business, you're probably going to take a loss, and that's okay. There's startup benefits, all these things that can benefit you here. Depreciation, 1031 exchange, and opportunity zones. I'm going to address each of the asterisk items. Here's the deductions, just the big ones right off the top of my head, and please let me know if we neglected to include any. Startup expenses for businesses, home office, and actual office if you're renting a place for your business, or if you're borrowing your basement office like I'm sitting in right now. Your mortgage interest, not your mortgage, but your mortgage interest is also a tax deductible item, or the rent you might pay someone just if you're renting a car or something like that, your lease. Business insurance and taxes. Obviously, taxes can't be taxed, even though sometimes they are. Double taxation is everywhere in our economy, unfortunately. So just do your research there. If you pay employees or contractors for work, that is all not income. That is an expense of doing business, and you're going to not have to claim that. Advertising and marketing, as long as it's for your business and your business purpose. Again, verify all this with your accountant, but cost of doing business is advertising. Real estate signs in the yard, for sale signs, for rent signs, your Google accounts, your DocuSign accounts, whatever you have, it's all business expense. You need it. Business travel, if you're going to, I don't know, Brian and Richard, you guys are traveling out to Phoenix in a few months to go visit a guy for a seminar, right? That's going to be
No, that's just me.
Oh, it's not.
Brian's already been.
Not good for that.
All right.
So I did deduct it.
Oh, of course. There you go. So it is a deduction. Everything from your airline travel to your food while you're out there, as long as you're conducting business to further your business, it has to be clearly business related. You can't buy Walt Disney World tickets for 5 people. If you have 5 people in your family, expect it to be a deduction. But some things can be. Business use of your car, if it's a car you use 100% for business, you can deduct the whole thing. If it's partially used, you got to do the mileage deduction or pieces of that. I heard a very interesting piece of advice from the Kiyosaki series. Buy a junker, keep it at your house, use it as your personal car. You don't have to ever worry about an audit, especially with your vehicle. If you have a junker car and you have another car that you use for business, it's very clear that that car is personal, and it's not even, you don't even ask to be reimbursed for it. It's just sitting there, and whatever the miles are, they are. I thought it was a very interesting way to approach it. Education relating to your business and relating to furthering education can be a huge deduction that actually pays itself through brain equity. You teach yourself through a class that you're learning, and you can write that whole thing off. That's awesome. Charitable donations, when you get to the point where you can start donating money to people, that is the best. I know Greg, I saw recently over the holidays, his company donated a bunch of toys to the Children's Hospital in Lehigh Valley, and that's awesome. It's a fantastic PR event. It's taking care of people that need good quality things or items or support, and it's a write-off. I mean, it's a win-win-win in all directions. So those are just some of the few itemized deductions you can take. This is my favorite graphic of the whole presentation. A tax credit. Everybody on the call knows what a tax credit is, but for those that don't, a tax credit is not a tax write-off. It is a dollar-for-dollar application to your tax liability. So for example, if you have kids, you got tax credits advanced over the last few months to year through COVID. It's going to surprise a lot of people because they've been getting money from the government, which they thought was COVID relief money, and it's actually their tax return coming to them in chunks over the last few months. Tax credits are what the government gives to businesses to encourage them to do certain things. The government is not going to give homeowner a tax credit for generating business and creating energy and research and development, which is why people always say tax the rich. This is one of those things. The government needs certain things done. And unless the homeowners are going to do it, they provide tax incentives, which is the only form of incentive they can to businesses to do work in those sectors and actually create an economy that's moving. So this graphic is very real. Businesses have a lot of benefit, and it goes all the way down to the single member LLC. Lots of businesses get benefit from tax credits as long as you invest and do areas that the government needs it done. And many, many more tax credits. Depreciation is one of the biggest expenses that you have. Single largest deduction of every year in potential. It allows you to take deduction for an asset that's increasing in value. Some people invest purely for depreciation. If you buy a house and you depreciate it, meaning that value, that widget is going to lose value over time because it's naturally going to decay or whatever they call it. However, over time, we know that real estate is going to appreciate. So if you can somehow invest in an asset that you can claim depreciation, but it's actually an increase in value, that is a win-win, again, in all directions. Excuse me. You can depreciate real estate over various terms. The items inside, however, depreciate at different rates. You can pull every item and every material out of a building and depreciate it on a different schedule. However, that gets very complicated. But when you get to a higher level of investing, there's guys that do that quite frequently. 1031 exchange is named off of Section 1031 of the IRS tax code, and it's designed to encourage a property exchange to keep the market moving. The preface is that you start in a small property. You have to exchange it for a equal or higher value property of similar kind. It doesn't have to be. You can change 3 houses into an apartment building, turn the apartment building into a factory, like the graphic shows. But the purpose of capital gains tax is to get the government to profit off of the sale of real estate and other things. The 1031 exchange, however, allows real estate investors and other investors to sell those assets while deferring the capital gains tax, which sometimes can be significant. 15, 20, or even more than that percentage of the sale price goes right to the government. So if you take a single family home, easy numbers, $100,000, and you sell it, you're going to pay capital gains tax, which could be $15,000 to $20,000. But if you choose to sell that single family home and buy either another single family home of the same value or more, 2, 3, 4, 5 single family homes, or an apartment building of $500,000, you don't have to pay that tax. In the beginning, the returns aren't that big of savings. However, if you don't pay $20,000 of capital gains tax now, roll it into a bigger property. When you go to sell that bigger property and you roll that into a bigger property or 10 or 15 smaller ones, you are still deferring the tax that you're paying. If done correctly, and these things are set up through your accountant and your attorney and through the various forms of trusts, we'll talk about that in a second, these capital gains tax can be pushed off indefinitely until you pass away, and at which point they can be literally wiped clean. The tax liability can be wiped clean from your estate. So your kids don't have to pay tax that you've been deferring your whole life anyway. It's fantastic. You know, there's lots of good opportunities out there. It is not taking advantage of the tax system. It's written in law. It's encouraged because it's in the tax code. The government wants you to do this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. And most of the government and their employees are doing it themselves. These are the steps of a 1031. You got to sell a property, give the gains to the intermediary. You absolutely must use an intermediary. You identify the like-kind property within 45 days. You have to find it, identify it, and send a duty letter to the intermediary, negotiating with the seller, agree on a sale price, and have the intermediary wire the capital gains to title. Once it's done, it's done. If any one of these pieces is not done explicitly as it's written in the 1031 section, the whole thing could be bust. And not only did you waste your time doing this, you have to pay your intermediary and pay capital gains tax. So if you're going to do a capital gains deferment through a 1031 exchange, it's imperative that you look at a qualified intermediary to do this. And I think some of the guys on the call have some experience and have talked to people. I know, Brian, you've brought some information to the table about 1031 in the past. Talk to somebody who's done it. You don't want to do it yourself because it could be very expensive. Lastly, opportunity zones are a very, very hot topic lately. It's an investment program created by the local, state, and federal governments giving tax advantages to certain income or certain investments in lower income areas. Primarily, it's more of the bigger cities or center portions of cities that need to be gentrified. Qualified Opportunity Zone funds allow individuals to roll gains from any asset in underinvested communities to defer income taxes until some point in the future. So this is Center City, Allentown. And these buildings and most of the things you see on this are part of the opportunity zone or the neighborhood improvement zone of Allentown. Real estate in this section of town is qualified for certain funds, and it's also qualified to not have to pay capital gains tax on the sale of the property. It is a fantastic idea because you don't have to use a 1031 exchange then. This is just straight up opportunity zone law. So if you can find a building that's in opportunity zone or know where opportunity zones are coming in the future and get in on the ground floor before they become opportunity zones, that is a massive tactic that some people we know are using. When it comes sale time, you can be saving yourself a lot of money. However, because of the type of real estate, the acquisition costs are a little bit higher than average. The sellers kind of know what they have. Estate planning is huge. This is something that Richard and I have talked long and hard about. It could be the largest tax saving of all. In addition to depreciation, 1031 exchange, writing off. If you die and all of the stuff that you've generated, your companies, your assets remain, you could have a tax burden after you die to your family that is astronomical. Now, some people say when you're dead, they don't care, but I really think you should think about the people who will have to settle things after you pass, or if you're in business with someone, they'll have to settle this also. Have a will, advanced health care directive, and assets in a trust to help clearly map out your estate after you pass away. It can save your family a lot of heartache and massive taxes on your estate. Don't leave your heirs with accumulated debt or burden, and the 1031 tax exchanges, you could wipe that debt clean if you're able to 1031 these properties. Definitely consult your attorney and accountant for specific details on this. It's a big deal. This is a book that I've been reading, and I've been reading several times. I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, I'm holding it in front of me right now. Tax-Free Wealth is a fantastic book. It's written by Tom Wheelwright. It's $20-30 on Amazon. I got a paperback copy during Christmas time, so it was a little bit more expensive. But the stuff that's in that book is fantastic. It's not a commercial. It's not trying to sell his services. It is very clearly a book geared specifically towards real estate investors and reducing your tax liability. I can't say enough good stuff about that book. So for what it's worth, take a look. And then this is my shameless plug at the end. What's the difference between a taxidermist and a tax collector? The taxidermist takes only your skin, by Mark Twain. Anybody have questions on taxes or way to reduce liability?
Well, it's something that could be a series.
Oh yeah, man. This could be days and days and days, and it's a lot of opportunity here. So we got 4 of us left on the call. I really appreciate everybody joining. It's a new format, kind of short and really respected everybody's day, but we have some good stuff coming up here.
Yeah, thank you for putting
Thanks,
together.
Matt.
You got it, man.